I don't even think everyone who's in a situationship is terrible. It just means they don't know what they want. But you just have to protect your peace and accept that you might not get closure, you might not get an explanation, but at the end of the day, you're just going to keep hurting yourself if you let it continue. So if you're okay with hurting yourself, have at it.
I had done all these things for him in his personal life to help him and never bought me a gift, but he was able to do that for her.
I think that's actually why I don't like dating. And a lot of people my age don't, because it is exhausting because we deal with this.
Hi, I'm Debbie.
I'm Caitlyn.
Welcome to Dating at Her Age. I mean, dating at her age? Oh, poor thing. I am looking forward to having this conversation with Caitlyn. Of course, you being in your 20s, Caitlyn, and me being in my 50s and dating. Again, after being married for a couple of decades, it's just new territory out here for me. And I don't exactly know what a situationship is, but I'm almost certain that I've been caught in one in the last few years. And it is so... It just made me sad. It made me frustrated. I didn't know what to do. And I wasn't 100% sure if we were in a relationship, because sometimes it felt like it. And other times I'm like, I was probably in a situationship the whole time and I just didn't want to recognize the flags.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you're lucky if you've never been in a situationship is what I should say, because I think it's the new way of dating and it's unfortunate because it's toxic and it always hurts someone, if not both parties in the end, because you pretty much defined it, but a situationship is basically a relationship that has not been defined, and it gives the ability for one party or both, I guess, but to do everything that you might do in a relationship, but part-time, and not have to deal with the commitment and the seriousness of it. And so it keeps people on the hook, and it's very confusing usually. And you may not even realize you're doing it or you're in one, but you do have to recognize the signs of that it shouldn't always be that way. So
to me, after experiencing this, it almost felt like sort of the crack cocaine of the dating world, where you become addicted. And for me, it almost became impossible for me to step away from it permanently because he kept coming back into my life.
Yeah.
And I felt manipulated. I felt disappointed. And he was my same age. We were both in our 50s. So to me, this it's just like, it's nothing I've ever experienced before when I was in my 20s and dating. We went steady. I mean, that's what it was. You got into a relationship and you went steady. I was assumed, I guess, that they weren't seeing anybody else back then. It seemed like we were always together. And then with this situation, and I can give you specifics and maybe you can help, I know you can help walk me through the red flags of a situationship. It felt as though I was addicted to a really negative situation.
Yeah, and I know that I can identify the red flags, and I can speak to how to get out of one, but it is so hard to do that. And it's way easier said than done. So I will lay out things that you can do to end it, but it's easier said than done. And it's something you work through very difficultly because there's an attachment depending on how long it goes on. So it's a very difficult, and it's very toxic.
I found I was sad to be there more than I was happy to be there.
That's a sign. That's something I was going to talk into. If it's negatively affecting you and, it's giving you more anxiety and confusion than peace because you don't have clarity, that's one example that you might be in a situationship, because if you're confused, that's a big sign after a certain point.
And I can't speak for all women who are dating at my age, but just for me, it does feel like the dating pool is so shallow that something comes along. It's like, oh my goodness, I got to try to pretzel this situation. I'm going to twist and turn and make it work. And that could be why I stuck around. Because who else is out there? At least it's a warm body. I mean, at least he has a pulse. But for me, it just turned out to be just a lot of mind games. And can I kind of give you the lowdown on what happened?
Yes, please.
Can I spill the tea?
Yes.
And then will you walk me through the steps of, you might be in a relationship.
Yes, I'll give you more.
So this started during the pandemic when, dating was rough because it was just, either masked up or places were shut down. And I connected with him just because, of past friendships, and, it was not even on a dating app. And the first few months were awesome. It was so fun. I mean, we were doing things together. We were barbecuing together. We went on some trips together out of town. It was just a lot of fun, and it felt really relaxing, and it felt good. And then about month 3 or 4, I started wondering, like, what is this? Like, is this a relationship? Because he wasn't bringing it up at all. And so we'd talk almost every night on the phone, and we'd see each other pretty regularly. But when he called me, and I was sitting in my car in the driveway, and I thought, I'm just going to ask him what this is in his mind. And I said, are we in a relationship? So I was very specific. And it's almost like he had a meltdown of like word choices, like he couldn't figure out.
Because you scared him with the "what are we?"
That's
made him panic.
That's exactly how it felt.
Well, it makes sense, because I think that's exactly what people who are okay with situationships don't want you to say, is the "what are you?" They want you to be okay with the everything that a relationship may satisfy, without the commitment and the label.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, I could tell right away. You don't need to keep him and hawing and making up words and making up excuses. I could tell right away that we were nothing to him other than like what I now know as a situationship. And so when this was going on, I was just completely unfamiliar with that term. And I've since learned a lot about it, not as much as you are going to share with me. But, and then from there, it just felt like I kept getting strung along.
Yep,
so Christmas comes around, no Christmas gift. My birthday rolls around. I get a happy birthday wish over text, but no celebration, no dinner, no birthday gift. And I'll mind you, I had given him a small little birthday party on my own, and then given him a gift. And then summer rolls around, and we just kind of do some road trips together, and we have a great time again. But by then, it felt like on my end, it was really fizzling. And so I'm trying to pull away, because that's just not what I'm interested in long term. And it had already been like a good year and a half at that point of being strung along. My heart was breaking. My focus was always on him. And I realized I was losing focus of my own family situation with my kids. I'm divorced, but I still have 3 kids that I, hang out with in their 20s, and I want to be focused on them. And I was my mind was always on him, and also work. We work on the same show together on KSL, and I felt like I was losing focus at times on the important things that I needed to focus on for my career. And, my mind cannot be in some failing relationship day after day after day for months on, and nobody should be, and then be a top performer on the radio. So for my own mental health, I started to pull away, and I'll be darned if he just didn't start picking up the phone calls and the dinner. And he always paid for dinner when we went out, always paid for dinner. And there were times when I would meet friends, and then there were times when I felt like I wasn't invited along for things. There was a big work event that he never invited me to. And as a result, then I returned the favor. And when I had major public events, I wasn't inviting him either, because I was starting to settle into the idea that we were together on his terms.
Yeah, and I can relate to that a lot, which you can flip the switch and make it on your terms. It's just a lot harder to do. But that sounds exactly like a situationship.
And this went on for way
it always does.
Long.
Yep. And you probably still have an attachment that comes in every now and then, and it just like dips in and it's like, oh, nope. But it's the space that helps with that. But then it's hard. But the law of detachment that you mentioned there when you step away, it always pulls them back in because they want to keep you on the hook when they feel like they're losing you.
And I don't know if other women are like this, but I would never put a man in that situation.
No.
I would never do that. I would be very clear with him. Clearly, I was the one asking the questions. I want clarity. I want direction. I don't want to waste my time. Look, I don't feel old, but 57 years old. I'm not getting any younger. The clock is ticking. Like, I just don't want to spin my wheels on something that's never going to go anywhere.
Well,
I also have kids, right? I have kids. Yes, they're grown, but to me, and I'm very close with my 3 kids. To me, I want them to know the person that mom's spending time with, and I want them to be at those backyard barbecues. I want them to occasionally be, maybe meeting us on a road trip or something like that, where we become a new family unit, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And that was not happening. And so when I started adding up all of the things that weren't happening for me, I realized I had to get out. Because if I'm even going through this on my own, my kids don't really even know this man at all. That's not where I see my future.
Yeah, and it's the inconsistency is very, it's toxic and alarming. But I do think that it really has to do with the other person completely. Like either they don't even realize they're doing it. I don't even know if it's always malicious. It may not be at all. It could be totally innocent. They don't know what they're doing, but there is something internally that does not want them to commit, and it will not let them. There's a block. They need to heal, or they just are totally fine with dragging you along and they know exactly what they're doing. Could go either way, but it's unhealthy. And for any age, nobody deserves to be strung along like that. Everybody deserves to just be able to talk about it. Like, I don't even care if you lay it out on the line, but at least tell me where we're going. If it's going nowhere, that's great, because then you know what to do with that information.
Yeah. So be specific. Like, I see you in my life as this, and not that. Yeah. But that's not what I got at all, and it was heartbreaking. So, can you walk me through? Yes. You might be in a situationship.
You laid out a lot of examples I was going to mention in your story because you have a prime example of a situationship, but I'll simplify it a little bit. So
okay, so in a few minutes, you're going to walk us through how to know if you're in a situationship.
Yes,
perfect.
Okay, we're back and we're talking about the almighty word situationships. I think that this has been called a few different things in the past. It could be called a thing. When I was younger, it was called I have a thing with this person, or just it's the label of no labels almost. Or it could almost be categorized as friends with benefits, but I feel like that's even a little bit more defined than what a situationship. You just got the situation that you're in and you don't know what to call it with another person.
It's a new word.
It is, and it's new, and I think it's the new norm for a lot of relationships because it just takes pressure off of people, and it should not be that way. People should not be able to just go into relationships thinking they can get away with not being able to show up and commit.
So, I've had people on who don't know me particularly well say, "Oh, you should know that you were in a situationship," but the reality of it is, I'm dating after 23 years with the same man, 21 years married, and I am in my 50s now. And we didn't have situationships in the 80s and 90s when I was dating. It was like you're dating somebody, maybe we went steady. You felt like you were in a one-on-one exclusive relationship with somebody. It was very clear to me that I was together with this man or whoever that was, and we were dating exclusively. So fast forward to 2016, I go through a divorce. A year or two later, I end up in the dating world again and feel bombarded with this new way of dating that I have never heard anything about, which is situationship. I am so glad I have you in my life, Caitlyn, to walk me through. And I think so many of us can benefit from this. When the red flags of when we might be in a situationship.
Yes, and it's unfortunate. I don't want to have this knowledge in my brain, but I've been through it. And I've been through it, I think, a couple of times. But it's just something that I've learned slowly over time what it was, because you see other people around you getting into relationships faster. And you're like, why am I here just dealing with this? Because in my experience, I've been preoccupied and focused on college and work and stuff. So I didn't care when this was happening in my life. And then it's things like I kind of realized like, oh, this probably should have progressed if it was actually going to be anything. And then you bring it up, and either they don't know what to say, or they tell you something and their actions don't match their words. So it keeps you on the hook. And that's when you have to really just like, easier said than done, but just kind of focus in on yourself and make the decision for the team instead of them making the decision for you. So my first identifier, which you hit the nail on the head with this, is if you do all the things are moving in the direction of things of a relationship, but you have not defined the relationship and there is no commitment. And I would say this isn't after the first date, right? It's like maybe after, you said 3 months is when you start thinking about it. I think 3 months is a good window to know like if it should be defined or not by them, because I think you should have that conversation after 3 months. If you're consistently talking to them or hanging out with them, inconsistency is another one, but not defining the relationship in any way. Because I think if you have the conversation and you define it as, yes, I do want a relationship, or no, I'm just wanting to do what we're doing, and that's okay. Because you know what they want, and you can make a decision based off of that information and move on with your life with or without them. But when it's so muddy and up in the air is when it gets so confusing for anybody. So that's my first one. Second one I hit on is inconsistency. They're not always there talking to you maybe every day or every other day. There's not consistent plans happening, or they check in with you on the weekends or late at night. Those types of signs, you might be in a situationship if you're feeling kind of confused about how often you should be seeing this person.
So I'll just go back to my situationship. I was always confused as to what the weekends would hold. That's
what I mean.
So you might be in a situationship if you don't know what the plans are. And I wasn't expecting that we were going to be doing something every weekend, but sometimes it would be a late afternoon, Friday night phone call.
Last minute.
Yeah, after work, and was like, can we meet for dinner?
Yeah.
And then some Friday nights or weekends would go by, and we wouldn't see each other. So that inconsistency, although I did not initially chalk it up to, oh, I'm in a situationship, will definitely be a red flag for me going forward.
Yeah, and it is hard to explain because I think that it can be different in every situation, but there are just patterns, because they could be making long-term plans with you, but they don't talk to you a lot in between even. So it's like the last-minute plans is a flag, or you catch them when you're out and then you end up kind of back in your situation, things like that. But I've experienced it in multiple levels where you are making longer-term plans, but it's all messy in between, and you're just confused all over. So but if you are feeling confused, if you feel like you are not a priority in their life and they are not making you an active part of their life after a certain amount of time, like if it's after 2 weeks, maybe it's just not working out. But if you're doing this consistently, they keep popping in and out for like 3, 4, 6 months, a year, whatever, you might be in a situationship and you need to address that. So my next one that I want to say, this goes back to the confusion. If you are asked if you're single and you don't know how to respond to that, because it's in the back of your head.
So if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, Deb, are you dating? Are you single?
And you're like, well...
and you have to use like multiple, like if you have to write an essay in your head
I'm talking to this guy, but he's here sometimes. We hang out some other times. Sometimes he's gone. I don't know for sure, but I'm emotionally, you're attached is what that kind of means. And so it like you don't have a label, but you're emotionally attached. And that's what hurts the most, because you're the one on the hook there.
That is phenomenal that you should sit there and make up some long explanation in your brain about what this is.
And there's enough history there for it to go for miles is even harder. If it's just like you met this person a month ago, it's simple, but it's like, oh, there was this like
my
a year
goodness.
ago, and I just don't know.
If somebody would have come up to me and said that about the situationship that I was in, I'd be like, how many hours do you have?
Yeah, exactly.
Define your relationship for me, Deb. Well, it's a 5,000 word essay. Do you got time?
Yeah.
That is definitely a flight. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah. Like
I haven't
he
thought of
messaged
that.
me on March 5th, but I haven't heard from him since, I don't know, since July. Or like he didn't talk to me again till July type of thing. It's confusing. So that, I guess, confusion is the big, after a certain point.
And because you're in such a state of confusion, you don't have the words that are,
it was hard for me to explain
to a friend.
just then, because I was like, because I relate to that a lot, and it hurts because it's almost embarrassing if you have to say that.
Bingo.
After a certain point of time. I keep saying that because that context matters. But
and also I have to look at this and say, why am I putting up with that?
yeah, and
Why am I putting up with it when friends ask me if I'm dating anybody or if I have a boyfriend, and I have to present to them a 4,500-page novel on what I meant, just to explain and qualify everything? Why am I doing that to myself?
Yeah, and it's like I said, harder like to address that than
I do want to. Yeah,
it's hard.
Well, I will say
But
this:
you are in control.
I have had to show. I've had to show myself grace and understanding, because I can emotionally and psychologically spend a lot of time beating myself up over the wasted
That's very
months.
important, because I can come on here and say, do this, do that, do this, because I'm going to get into a little bit more on how to address it as well. But I'll find myself in a situation 2 months from now when I'm hanging out with someone that I have like a past history with, and I'll forget everything I said. I'm like, oh, never mind. Hurt me. It's all fine. But like, because that's true, you just kind of forget everything, all the work you've done. You have to take notes, honestly, sometimes, because they can so easily drag you back in. And even if you've had the conversation before, sometimes it's so much easier to just give into the situation than to hold up your boundaries, because it's just easy, but it's going to hurt you in the end. So,
I know you're not a therapist, but this has been very
I've gone through a lot of work
me.
in my brain, but I'm speaking to myself at the same time because I still have work to do. But it's just,
because you've been trapped in situationships too, but you knew what they were.
After it took a long time to get there, but I mean, I do now, and I know what helps me in life and what hurts me in life, and that it doesn't help when it's a one-sided relationship. Something my therapist actually told me once was relationships only work if two parties are involved, and it's obvious, right? But that's another sign that I was going to get to, is if you feel like you are always sending the first message, you are always putting the effort in.
Like I was the only one throwing the birthday parties.
That too, yeah.
For
and
him.
They come back in when they want to, randomly,
Right.
but you feel like you're the one putting in consistent effort. Yeah, you might be in a situationship, or you just might be being treated disrespectfully.
What was the United Nations of red flags for me, and this came way late for me, and I'd already pretty much torn away from the situationship I was in, is that he told me he bought a female coworker a jacket for Christmas.
Yeah, it's disrespectful.
And this was not like a Secret Santa situation where everybody's buying. He went and bought her a jacket. Yet I had done all these things for him in his personal life to help him when he got in a jam with his dog or something like that. I was always there, and never bought me a gift. But I thought, well, maybe he's just maybe he's not a gift giver. Maybe he's not good at shopping. But he was able to do that for her. Yeah. And I was so glad I was at the point when he said that to me that I was completely done with this man.
And that's a key point, because being done helps a lot. And I think that was something I was going to bring up, is if there are other people involved on the side that you may or may not know about, you might be in a situationship, because you can't allow that, that you don't even know if that person was involved. It was just they did that for that person. But that's
no,
part
I'm
of,
not saying I don't know for sure,
but it's an example.
Yeah, but I suspected it,
bleeding the lines there. So
not with that. Well, not with them necessarily, but I suspected that he was seeing other women,
and that's what they get with the freedom of not defining the relationship. They're allowed to do that because you're not in a relationship. So why they don't? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that they hurt you by doing that, or that they're wasting your time.
And can I just add in my own? You might be in a situationship if you feel like he's consistently dishonest.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
He's consistently hiding things.
Yep.
You suspect that something else is going on, but he's not being upfront with you about it.
They don't communicate. It's like their least
and
favorite thing to do.
To me, sometimes this is out of design. It's not out of anything other than they're just designing their life that way to keep you on the line while they are able to do what they want to do.
Yeah. And something that kind of goes off of that is if they are totally fine with being intimate or calling you over when it's time to snuggle, but they avoid deeper conversations either in those moments or at any point. Once that part comes, once the intimacy is satisfied or whatever, it doesn't matter anymore. They don't want to get deeper. And so that's a big definition for situationships, I think. So that
is when the phone rings.
And if it's late at night specifically, but that's per situation. But it's like they're fine being with you like physically in any way and just kind of being there for that when they need to have a need met, whether it's emotionally, physically, whatever, but they just will not move it to the next step and they won't even talk to you about it. Or they talk to you about it, say things, don't do the things.
They say things that they know you want to hear to keep you on the line.
Yeah, and I do say every situation's different. I don't always think it's malicious because there are people who are, I think just don't care at all. But I think that people do have, things blocking them mentally and stuff like that can kind of, they want to do things. They can't always get there. But I do think that if they wanted to, they would, is a true statement. I think that some people can work to get to the point of doing those things that they want to do instead of, just kind of ignoring you altogether and just not making it a priority.
The more we talk about this, the more bugged I'm getting. And I'm thinking this was totally
it is triggering.
This was totally manipulative. My situation was completely manipulative of me. And because, I feel like I'm just a good person and I want to believe people in general. Especially in my personal life. My work life as an investigative reporter, I would doubt lots of people's stories and then double check them all. But in my personal life, I do want to leave my professional life at the door when I walk through the door at home or at a restaurant because I want to have a personal life that it's at peace, that I can count on somebody for support and love and understanding who isn't going to be psychologically and mentally manipulating me. Yeah. So the longer we talk about this, the more wound up I'm getting.
It is triggering. It's valid. But it's because we want to be good people and we want to have hope for these situations. And then someone keeps you on the line and just really, they use you almost for certain things and they may not even realize they're doing it. They might. I just keep saying, I just think every situation's different. So I don't want to just be like, everyone's terrible. You know what I mean? But I think that it's just, if you let it go on too long, it's going to really hurt you in the end. And that's where you have to, once you identify this, after a certain point, you are in control of getting out of it, or at least identifying it. And it is not easy. You're going to be sad. You're going to be in pain. But obviously we're not alone. I've talked to multiple people just knowing I was going to record this, and a lot of people are in situationships or have at least experienced it. They don't want to be, but it's because you don't know what you're doing at the beginning until you're like, wait, this is incorrect. This is not healthy. So I do want to talk. Generally, if the flags of being in a situationship are confusion, you have not defined it, and you just get more anxiety than peace from the situation, and it's going on and lingering for too long, and they keep popping in and out. I think that's the summary of it, and actions not matching words, but that could be in any situation as well.
Next, what I really want from you, Caitlyn, is your best tips from your own situationship experiences of how to get out of these things and get out of them quick.
Yes. We've been talking about how to identify if you might be in a situationship, and now I want to talk about what to do about it and how to get out of it. So situationships, as we've mentioned, are very complex and toxic, and it might be hard to identify, but overall, if you're confused, you might be in a situationship. Well, that's what I'm going to say.
The big tip for me that you gave me, then I'm so grateful for this, Caitlyn, is if somebody asks you, hey, are you dating somebody? Do you have a boyfriend? And you have to, read them the Magna Carta of the situation that you're in, or it's as long as the War and Peace is, you're in a situationship. If it's not just it's a simple definition of, yes, I have a boyfriend. That should be what it is. It shouldn't be, well, like he texted me last week, and then 2 weeks before that, and then I haven't heard from him for a while, and sometimes we go out and sometimes we don't. And I asked him if he wanted to be in a committed relationship 6 months ago, but he's like, he's going to think about it, and he's never gotten back. You're in a situationship. And for me, I found the situationship that I'm now learning so much more about, thanks to you, to be really emotionally draining. It was a complete waste of my time. I felt manipulated. I was spending too much time thinking about him and where we were at in our timeline of dating, that I should have been focused on my kids and doing things with them. They're adults. They're off on their own, but still, I mean, I'm sitting over here on a Friday night wondering if I'm going to get a phone call to go to dinner. Well, I should have been out doing other things with friends or my kids. And so this is a psychological, it's an emotional drain. It has been on me. That's my experience. And so I think it's really important for me to hear from you. How do I get out of these things much sooner?
Yeah, and that's important because you don't know if you're wasting time or working towards something when you don't define a relationship like that after a certain point.
Yeah,
but
I don't have time to waste.
Yeah, if you're confused and it's been like, I don't know, I said 3 months, but 6 months or a year and you're still confused,
run.
And I'm going to tell you things that you can do about the situation to help your peace. And get ready, it's not easy.
This is through your experience, right? And through your friends.
That I'm still learning. It's not I just know what I need to do, and I've tried it, and I know what does work and what doesn't.
Okay.
But I know that you have to protect yourself. That's at the end of the day, you do what's best for you. So number one thing that I want to point out, if not all situationships talk to you about this, but if they've told you that you don't want to, that they're not looking for a relationship and that it's not serious, believe them. You're not changing them. They might come back around. Anything's possible, like when the time is right. But believe them.
But don't think that.
If they don't think that. Don't live your life on that. But believe them what they say or even what they show. And it's confusing because the actions don't always match the words, but believe what they are showing there. If they're not actively a part of your life, if they're not making plans, if they're not committing.
They told you.
Yeah.
They don't want you. Like he told me.
If they flat out tell you, then go with that. Please. You're not fixing them.
Then he needs to be toast. It's like we're done.
For now.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't even
say
what you
want.
Shouldn't say for now. Like I should say that's the decision that's being made, and then if the timing is right, they'll come back around.
Well, if I want a relationship and I'm tired of not knowing where things are going and he's not defining it, then it's up to me to say, that's enough. I'm done. That's fine. That's fine. You live your life. But that just doesn't work for me.
They'll either change for themselves or you will move on and never talk to them again and be happier. Either way, it's going to work out for you. But you have to detach and let go. And overall, you have control over this. So setting the boundaries and kind of ripping if this happens early on, say the 3-month window, you have way less history to deal with. So it's easier to rip that Band-Aid off. Do it fast if you're early on, because the farther into it you get, the harder it is. So just identify it with them. Be clear if it helps you to get that off your chest, and identify the what are we conversation, or like identify this isn't working for me because I'm not feeling any needs met. What do you want out of this? If they don't give you an answer you're looking for, that's the answer, and you're moving on. So you have to set that boundary, and the boundary is to not let them come back in after you've had that conversation, which is the hardest thing to do. Mm-hmm. It's the absolute hardest things to do. I will have to turn this podcast back on in like 4 months when I face this situation probably, and remind myself, because it's so easy to let your guard down and just be like, it's okay. And then you're sad the next day.
Oh, that's a great idea though. Keep this handy.
It's hard. Put notes in your phone so you don't forget all your boundary things you need to tell them.
Can I insert something here that I did? I go to therapy and I talk about a lot of things. I talk about how to be an empty nester with my therapist. This is all new territory for me. I talk about how to be a mom to grown adult kids because I'm so used to, being a mom of younger kids where you have to watch what they're doing all the time or be there to help. And then now they're making their own decisions. And one thing I talked to my therapist about as well is how to get the situationship out of my head, how to get this man out of my head. And he gave me some great tips, and I'm not going to hijack your
I want you
tips.
to tell me.
But no, let's do a whole nother episode on that. But the one thing he did say is what you said, write it down.
It does help.
write it down. And I have had to go back to my notes. I write it in my cell phone. So it's with me at all times. So if the phone rings and I ignore the call, but I'm tempted to call them back, I can go right to those notes.
Yeah.
And I will in the next, in like another episode, I will go through the step-by-step process that my therapist gave me that completely worked for me. About how to actually craft your notes in such a way, and there's a very specific way to do this, that it works. It has staying power. So, okay, I digress.
That's going to be our next episode because I want to know more.
Okay, it was awesome.
I'm ready. So.
It was an aha light bulb moment for me. I ran home and I did the homework my therapist assigned me, and it paid off.
That's good.
Big time.
And you do have to do a lot of internal work. It's not like you just can do it overnight if you have an attachment to this person.
Which is wild because I'm like, this person didn't even belong in my life to begin with. But now I got to go to work on this.
It's the wishy-washy on the hook, no clear lines, no clear ending. And that is also another thing that you have to accept. Closure might not happen.
Oh.
Because they might just not tell you what they want, or they're telling you what they are going to do, and then it never changes. And so you have to, and this is what I struggle with currently, is like closure might not happen and you might just have to hurt a little bit and just move on and just decide that it's done. And you can do that for yourself. It's harder when you're facing the person, obviously, which is where the writing things down comes in. But you have to accept that you might not get an explanation. But you have to decide, is this what you want? Is it serving you or is it hurting you? And once you come to that decision, you have to take action for yourself, and you just have to cut them out. And whether that's cutting them out softly, cutting that out and never speaking to them, that's a decision you can make on your own. But space and all of that will help you move forward by not contacting them, maybe blocking them. It's harder when you're attached. And if you're in like the same friend group and whatnot, that makes it 10 times harder. But you just have to protect your peace and accept that you might not get closure, you might not get an explanation. But at the end of the day, you're just going to keep hurting yourself if you let it continue. So if you're okay with hurting yourself, have at it. But you just have to know what's good for you, because once you let go of that, it could probably bring in other opportunities for you, because you are emotionally closed off when you have this situation going on. Your energy's closed off. Your mind's tied up. You're confused. So you're not going to be open.
I was exhausted too.
Yeah, and
now that you said that, I realized I was exhausted.
Yeah, I think that's actually why I don't like dating. And a lot of people my age don't, because it is exhausting, because we deal with this. This is our example of dating. It's not like, oh, I want to be in a relationship with you.
I'm sorry. This is not good.
I mean, this is my experience. There's great people out there. Not everybody's terrible. And I don't even think everyone who's in a situationship is terrible. It just means they don't know what they want. And that is not your problem to figure out.
Is when one person is getting strung along.
Yes.
And the other person is not being honest, upfront, transparent about what that person means or doesn't mean to them.
At the end of the day, like, it's going to hurt one person probably more than the other, but if it's being drug along too much, it's going to hurt both people. Because if you just know it's not going to work out and you have to face that, they have to let you go too, because they're naturally going to be attached to you unless they just don't have a soul. But you know what I mean? After a certain point, it's going to hurt both of you. So you have to, it's just a maturity thing and a healing thing, and you really do have to put in work. On both ends. You know, maybe you'll end up being together, but don't hold on to that hope. You have to do what's right for you. And they don't run your life, you do. So that's like how you were explaining. They were in charge of the situationship, the relationship. A situationship is a relationship. It's just undefined. So because you do have a connection with that person, and there's obviously a reason they're stringing you along, because they like you. They just are scared to commit because they think there's other options, or they just don't want to be tied down. And that's just not fair.
Or it could be that you're just not the right one for them. And that's
okay. But they should just let you go.
But it's working for them. Something is working for them. That's my view of it.
Something's being satisfied because they haven't found the next best thing or the thing that's right for them, or they're scared. Every situation is different. But yeah, it's a lot, and I just don't want anybody to go through them. But unfortunately, it's just how things work. But I know that there are good people out there who want relationships. They're probably listening like, you don't ever give the good ones a chance. Well, it's because I've been hooked on things that I can't get out of my brain. I'm sorry. I'm working on myself. But the one thing that actually, this is kind of my final thought on, because really it's just putting all the energy into yourself. Get a therapist. Like, get an unbiased opinion to talk to you. Like, it helps because they can see it from the outside. But my
People are afraid. Yeah, I have a thought. People are afraid to go to therapy.
And you can't. It's hard to
I
get
have a
access
lot,
to it.
especially
It's
my
expensive,
age,
but-
Caitlyn. I think it's therapy. This is my view. Therapy is much more normalized for people in their 20s and hopefully in their 30s, and I think it's an awesome thing. But when it comes to my age group, we grew up in a generation where we were just expected to dust it off when we fell down, got it up, get through it. I mean, I'm of the generation where corporal punishment in school was still a thing.
Yeah, that
and you
makes
just
sense.
hide your tears. So I think therapy is awesome. I have had to come to terms in the past. I got to turn to a therapist for some advice here.
Yep.
And now I embrace it. And sometimes people are afraid of the cost too. I'll just say this. If you have insurance, mine's $20 a session.
Mine is too. Yeah. So insurance helps.
$20 a session. And how I justify it is I need the help. I need the direction.
It does help.
I need those little tips that will help me better myself and better my response to whatever it is. But also, we pay more like on a pedicure.
We do. Yeah.
Right. I think the last time I went and got a pedicure, which was months ago because I couldn't believe the price, it was $80 with a tip. So if I'm spending $40 a month or $80 a month on therapy to be better in my brain and make my life better, it's money well spent.
And having just the unbiased voice, because you can talk to your friends and people who are closer to the situation as you, but they'll just they'll automatically be like, stop that, get out of the situation. But then you can go into therapy and they'll validate you for feeling the way that you do, and not just it's good. Therapy is good, and I actually think, and one thing just about therapy, if your first session's not the best or first few, you either might just not be with the right therapist, and that's okay. You can shop around, or you haven't gotten to the deep stuff yet.
It takes time.
And it's scary. Therapy's hard.
They have to get to know you.
Yeah, sometimes it can be hard if you've got a lot of trauma to work through. But anyways, that's probably a whole different tangent. But I actually think situationships are kind of stemmed from, honestly, men, because I think therapy's a little stigmatized for men. It's not as common. I think because men don't do the self-work and have a therapist, not all, I'm not speaking to everybody, but it causes them to not know what they want and not be able to work past being able to, settle down and commit and stuff like that. So I actually think that that's a big reason, because I think women are more self-aware. So we're ready to address these things, and men just might be a little bit behind on that. And that's why it seems to be this tug and pull more on the men's side, but I know girls can do this too. So
therapy, but then you have a bonus tip for us, and I think it's I know what it is, and I think it's your best tip.
This is the one that when I actually thought of this myself, I think I was doing a meditation and this came through, is think of the little girl inside you, and
oh my goodness, I'm gonna cry.
It made me cry when I thought about this.
My goodness,
is this situation what you would want for her? And the answer is no. You would not have thought this when you were an 8-year-old, that you would be being treated like this. And you can think of your daughter. And
I do.
Stuff like that.
That's ultimately what got me out of this. Is I started thinking about my daughters. Would I want them to get this runaround?
Yeah, you wouldn't.
From the significant other, the person that they're counting on in their life. No, absolutely not. But the little girl inside of you, I think of myself, running around the front yard with my sister in Phoenix, where I grew up, and my friends playing outside. And these are the visuals. When you said that, would I ever imagine in my 50s that I would feel used, or I would feel manipulated by a man who's basically my same age? And I would never want that my nickname in the neighborhood literally was Little Debbie. Would I want that for Little Debbie?
Yeah.
I would not.
Well, and for me, it's like I actually, when I thought of my inner child, is what it's kind of called. You touch base with your inner child. I thought of me at a lake, because I always would camp. It was
with your family.
Yeah, in Joe's Valley specifically. Would I want little Katie, that young girl, to be in a situation like this in her 20s? No, you don't want that for anybody. But that it really helps you connect. Like, you don't deserve that. So that's just it helps you kind of identify, like, no, if someone's treating you like this, it's time to just like go back into self, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt, but you go right through it. You don't avoid it. You go through the pain, you figure it out, and then you'll end up better on the other side. But it's just, yeah. And I have so much sympathy that it's hard for me to set boundaries. I do it and then I feel bad. So it's hard. It's not easy. I'm not giving, like, just saying, oh, go say this and you'll be fine. No, it takes a lot of work.
Well, you know what else is hard? Giving up sugar.
Yeah.
Giving up sugar is hard. But the more I've given up sugar, if I'm on a diet and I give up sugar, the less I want sugar.
Yep.
It just feeds on itself.
It does, yeah. And
so when you start peeling yourself away and finding yourself again and remembering Katie or remembering little Debbie and what you would want for her, it makes it so much easier.
It helps you see it.
It helps you see it.
Yeah, and just kind of what you're actually doing right now, because it's really easy to get clouded in the moment and just be like, oh, they're kind of there. There's
hope.
Maybe they're going to do, maybe they're changing.
Oh, look, that's so sweet. Yeah. I mean, he actually thought about taking me to dinner last weekend, but then he got busy. That's not who
maybe
I
they
was.
like me now. Well, I will address it. It's nothing to do with you. It's all on them. If you're in that situation, don't ever have grace for yourself working through that, but always remember it's not you, it's them. And honestly, this has made me afraid of commitment as well. I think it's something that's happened to me because you just have all these red flags because you're scared of it too. Like, oh wait, maybe I don't know how to settle down because I'm so used to kind of the inconsistency. If I was in a healthy relationship, I think I would be, I might run away from it. And that's another whole episode that you might be the problem and how to kind of work through that. But it's something that everybody faces. You have to go through those journeys and its ups and downs and stuff like that. But there is just a lot of healing that goes through when you are even ready to date, and you can identify as you go on dates that you might not be ready, and that's okay. But just be clear with the person that you're that you're working with on that, where you're at and where they're at. And if they respect you enough, it'll be fine either way. So,
Caitlyn, thanks for bringing your greatest hits.
Yeah, I'm sorry I have experience on the topic. I don't wish it on anybody, but it's today's day and age, so.
No, this was so good for me to listen to. I think there's so much we can learn from what you've just taught us, having gone through it yourself. So I'm going to make sure I save this podcast. I'm going to make sure I save this podcast.
Yeah, we both need
and
it.
Go back and listen to it when I question if I'm getting myself into another situationship.
Yeah, this is a safe space. So have grace with yourself if it doesn't work on the first time you try to end it. It might take many, many tries.
I'll be honest. It took me a long time.
It
took me a long time.
And we all need the reminders. And
but now that I'm here, I don't want to go back.
Yeah, you don't want to. It's a learning lesson. So I could talk about this forever, but it just goes in the same circle because situationships are messy. So identifying them are messy, but you can see the patterns, and it's really just like a never-ending circle of a mess of a situation.
It's time for our Dater Hater segment.
Dater Hater.
Situationships and Caitlyn's gold medal moments of situationships she's been trapped in. And you, unfortunately, have a lot of experience in situationships, but you're not alone. So do I.
No, we're not. This is the new way of dating.
I do too.
It's not fun. It's the worst. And before I say these stories, I just want to say it's in the past. Everything's good now, but these are just some experiences that I definitely learned from.
Isn't that the first indication when somebody says that it's really not in the past? But go ahead.
I mean, we're talking about situationships, and I did some thinking on this, and I was like, I think I could share a couple of stories that they did impact me. And I mean, but like I said, it's in the past. Everything's good.
So how many do you have for us?
I think I'm going to share one or two, but I'll just start. One of my first experiences with the situationship, which I didn't even know that it was a situationship at the time. I think we called them things back then.
What?
But it's like, oh, I have a thing with this person, but that was code for situationship because it hadn't been defined.
Well, I think we called them flings back in my day.
Fling, same thing. It's all the same thing. I think situationship is just a new word for this like unestablished thing. But there was a time where it was kind of, I was just out of high school when this happened, and the situation had kind of fizzled out a little bit, but it also was still there. We still talked pretty frequently, and he had an event that was happening, and at this point we lived in different towns. We were both from the same town, and he had moved away, but he invited me to this event, and I was just like, oh, okay, cool, I'll go do that. I'll go support you because, I still like you, whatever, things like that. And I invited a few of my friends, and we went to this event. I was there. I supported him through the whole thing. He talked to me during the event very briefly, whatever. And then we he invited me to go back to his house with all of our friends. It was like a social thing afterwards. And he sat down on the couch with me for a second and just kind of talked to me, like basically to check a box, I think, to just acknowledge that I was there. Luckily, I am friends with his friend, so I wasn't like stranded there. That would be bad. But he talked to me for about 5 minutes, and then he said, okay, I think I'm going to go to bed. It's like 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, what? Okay, that's weird. I figured you'd be kind of up all night with your friends.
My heart just sank for you.
And I was like, whatever. I am honestly very good friends with his friends. So I was like, okay, I'll hang out with your buddies because it's fine. But then he went to bed, and I was like just hanging out with his friends. I was like, that's kind of weird. But then like 5 minutes later, I see a girl walk in her PJs and go straight to his room. And so he just wanted alone time.
My heart's really in my stomach.
Yeah, it's just a situation. And I think my friends' faces when that happened were just like filled with rage. His friends' face, all of them knew that was like, that wasn't okay to do in that moment. Like, you don't invite me to your house. And then also just invite other people, like hang out as a group if that's the thing. And it's okay. Cause like, honestly, my thing with situationships, just tell me like, oh, okay, I would love for you to come do this as a friend. I'm doing this. But they just make it so wishy-washy that it's hard. But that was my first experience with it.
Did you feel like when you were asked to show up at this event and then you went over to his place to hang out with everybody, did you feel like there was a more than a friend connection there?
Oh, yeah, there definitely was, because this was like probably a couple of years into like having the situationship. I think it was starting to fizzle a little bit because he had moved away, but like I still kind of talked to everyone. But that's a situationship. It's just, it happens when it happens, and there's no definition of what's going on. You don't know what's happening in their life, and they keep it that way because there's no obligation. They don't have to cater to me. They don't have to define it because we're not in a relationship, so I can do this. Because it's true, and that's the problem with situationships. So that's just one story.
So sorry.
Yeah, it happens. But that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Just wait until this next one, though.
Okay.
We
called it a gold medal moment. I don't know.
That one doesn't take the cake. That one was just a first try.
That shook me, Caitlyn. That shook me. That just seems. I just feel so bad for you.
Well, and this is probably why I don't love to date, is because these are the experiences that I've been dealt. Like all of them. They're just rough. But it's whatever. I learned a lot from that. But another one, so this other situation was probably a few years ago. And now this one was probably a longer situation, and it's within my friend group. So that's like I said, the lines are blurred. It's very confusing. And that's, I think, very common, is to have a situationship within your friend group. But there was a time where we were hanging out, and then he essentially, like, we had a heart-to-heart moment and whatnot, and he essentially asked to be exclusive, kind of. And I was like, okay, I've kind of got a red flag up, because I'm like, I don't know. Because before this, I should say, it was pretty much defined that wasn't where things were at, and that's totally okay. Like I said, just say how it is. Say you don't want this, you don't want to do it. It's all good. And then but then this happened, and he kind of had a change of heart, it seemed like, and he wanted to be exclusive. He said the words, "Will you be my girlfriend?" And I didn't even want to say that, because I'm like, I think in my mind I forgot that those words were said, because I like gaslit myself into thinking it didn't happen. But I remember that, because that doesn't get asked to me very often. So I was like, okay, that happened. And so that happened, whatever. And the next day it happened, and I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? How are these, and how is this happening? And I think we just established we want to be a little bit more connected on a regular basis and stuff like that. And then we figure it out. So I just took that as it was, and I was like, okay, let's try to connect. And we were kind of texting back and forth. Like another thing, we live kind of not long distance, but like in different towns. We had been talking for the whole week, and then he ended up coming and hanging out with us the next weekend. Things seemed fine, nothing crazy, but I also didn't really tell a lot of people, because I was like, I don't know what this means. I told like my close-knit circle.
Did you feel a little bit unsure
to
what the definition of girlfriend was at this point?
It came out of left field for me, just because of how long we had been in a situation. I was like, why now? Like, why? Like, I just kind of felt like it was going to crumble. That's bad. I was excited about it, but I was like,
actually see your point of view. You're afraid that it's going to get ripped out from under you, and you've told everybody.
Slowly into it. I was like, and that's something that's great too. If you're not sure if you want it, we'll walk at this at a pace that you're comfortable with, but we just have to talk about it. So we get there, the weekend happens, and then he goes home, like Sunday or whatever, and he ghosted me for like the whole next week. Ghosted. No, gone dark. So I was like, okay. And I was like, you did this. Like, I don't know. And everything, like, I was fine before.
Did it feel like you got set up and then knocked
yeah,
down
and
emotionally?
essentially, and that just means, like, it was essentially just ended up being like I wasn't ready for commitment. It went too fast. And like, and the thing that was so frustrating is like, yeah, I know that. And it's okay if you want to walk in slowly. And I've talked about this with him plenty of times. It's just like, we can do this at your own pace. Like, I don't know exactly, like, you don't have to put so much pressure on it. It's fine. But it's just like, it got to be, I think, too much and overwhelming. And I think there were other aspects going on in his life at the time. So that's part of it. But the worst thing you can do is leave someone in the dark. And we will talk about that with ghosting and what it does to your brain. And like I said, this is a part of my friend group. So that was obviously not the last time I saw him. It's not like I got ghosted and block number was blocked and I never saw him again. I saw him probably a couple weeks after I had picked him up and a few of my friends to just go out that night. I think I was in town for Thanksgiving, and he was just being super flirtatious at a bar we were at, but still hadn't even talked to me about any of this.
Flirtatious toward you?
No, towards others. And I was witnessing it. So it was just a bad situation. I'm going to spare a lot of details that were going on, but it was just like that overall happened. And I think that, there was drinking involved and whatnot, but it was just like, I was there. I had picked them up, still had not addressed the issue at all. And I just witnessed like that. And I went home and probably cried, and I called him out the next day. But that's kind of how that ended. And whatever. It didn't really end. He never actually broke up with me, I guess. So we might still be in a relationship, to be completely honest. Like, there was no conversation.
You might still be his girlfriend?
Yeah. I
think what's important is how you were treated was wrong.
Yes. And that's why I wanted to share those stories. Because if you are experiencing something like that, it's not okay. And you can there's something more to it probably internally, like on both sides, whatever. But it's just talk about what you want and how you feel, because you just avoid the situationship altogether.
It's how difficult has it been, or was it for you to disconnect emotionally from both of these situationships? I'm
still trying to. First one so long ago, I'm disconnected, whatever. But I just don't forget that moment. I was like, well, that was like, these moments also help you move on in a way. Like, there's like, well, that was really rude of you and really disrespectful of me, because I've been there for so many things for you and just stuff like that. And then you just kind of treat me like crap, whatever. But I don't know. I don't really think it's like intentional. I think that there's an internal battle with a lot of these, like, let's just say men who aren't quite ready to commit and stuff like that. I think it's an internal battle, but I just don't think you need to drag women through that. Like, just say it how it is. I'm not ready for this. I don't think I'm ready, because you can't just leave us on the hook. Like, that's what's so hard about it. But I'm still working on disconnecting from certain situations.
Which just goes to show, I think, in your situation, and I've been in a situationship, and it's been over for quite some time. I'm not kidding you. Say I thought about him yesterday.
Yeah, they don't really get out of your brain. You have tactics, which we'll share. But.
Right. We're gonna share all of this and more in upcoming episodes about ghosting and tactics to get, but I have noticed, since I've implemented the tactics that I'm going to share with you, it's fleeting. Mm-hmm. It's more like, oh, I'm kind of like driving, in his neighborhood or in the area, or going by an area maybe we used to go out together and meet up at, and I think about him. It's not, I don't dwell the way I used to. Mm-hmm. I used to dwell, and it got to the point, when we first ended it, that I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to forget about this. And it was, looking back, it was strictly a situationship. That's all it was. And at the time, because of you and your tips, Caitlyn, I have figured out, you know what? I've been caught in more situationships than I've realized. I've thought they are more than they are, that I meant more to them than I actually did. And that is a really tough place to be.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Yeah, no, I know I'm not alone, that's why I wanted to share that, because this is so common. But I just wish that it wasn't like this. And I just think, if you are not sure what you want, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you're not ready for a relationship, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But just be upfront about it and be very open with your communication about where things are at, even if you are still kind of talking to the other person, just so they're not like led on in the darkness, because it's such a hard place to be when you're just like, I'm kind of single, but I'm also kind of not, because I'm attached to this person who doesn't want anything to do with me. So like, but then they come back, and then like when they're right in front of you, that's when they got your attention, and they don't want to let you go.
They reel you
and
back
you
in.
Also don't, like, if you start flirting with somebody else and stuff, you just don't know what you're allowed to do. You're like in this weird gray area, because you don't want to like hurt their feelings, because they do have feelings for you probably.
Can I give you a little bit of a permission slip here?
Yeah.
You're allowed to do whatever you want to do with your life. I hope you know that. Now, of course, you're much older now and wiser, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
this
we all
is
are,
all
but
these
it's hard to
situations
get
were
there.
in the past. But like I said, I still deal with this on from time to time. Like this comes up. Like I still talk to that person every now and then. And so it still kind of goes back in a circle sometimes. But I just know from these experiences when it's actually, if there's going to be change, and that change has not occurred. So like you just kind of know once you've been through this where a situationship is and what if you're still in that. And that was definitely a defining moment of like, okay, this is hurting me more than it's like helping me. And so just be very, aware of the situation. I think early on establish, okay, after even a month or two, if you're talking to someone, like, okay, where do you see this going? And if they're afraid to have that conversation, then that's fine. You can move on because don't just get out of it before you get super attached.
That's great advice. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Yeah,
I'm
me too.
genuinely
But
sorry that
from
happened to you. And I'm sorry for anybody that's happening to. And as I'm sitting here listening to your stories, I'm thinking back on the times that I'm recognizing that I got caught in them too. But for some reason, my heart breaks more for you than it's broken for me. And I've shed a lot of tears over my situationships.
We learned from it though. It's all good. And like I said, that's like mild. Like mine are very, like they're unique, but I know so many of my friends who have been through situations like this and that are even worse. Like people are disrespectful. Like like I said, mine are, I feel everything's good. Like I have no hard feelings on this at all. It just is like, that was kind of rude. I didn't deserve that. But other people are just completely disrespectful, where they ghost, leave you in the dark forever. Or I don't know. There's worse than that. If you have a situationship story that you want to share, just give us a call.
Dater, hater.
Because I would love to hear more that I'm not alone. 801-575-5599, or reach out to us on social media, Dating at Her Age.
Yeah, Dating at Her Age. All of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Yeah, you can leave us a message there, or like you said, Caitlyn, 801-575-5599, and leave us a voicemail message, and we may play it back on one of our future Dater Hater moments.